I'm Brian Giesenschlag, co-host of Reds Live on Fox Sports Ohio, and honored to be a part of this conversation here today, and honored to be part of the first in this series, a show we call Share the Truth. And the first episode of this series will focus on the most relevant, the most timely, most important issue facing us and our country today, and that is the Cincinnati Reds speaking to young people about race. So, how did we get here? Well, unfortunately, hundreds of years of inequality and injustice in our country, that's obviously part of the problem. But these conversations we're having right now have been sparked most recently by the senseless killings of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and others. With conversations like this and shows like this, it is the intent of the Cincinnati Reds to be a part of these conversations now and moving forward, and obviously hoping that these conversations lead to change that would involve justice and future changes in our country. This conversation here today is also framed by the fact that today, as we record this show, is as the Reds join so many others in remembering one of these most important dates in African-American history. So with this show, we're going to talk, we're going to ask questions, and most importantly, we're going to listen to what's being said here today, and hopefully we can be a part of affecting some of this change in our community and in others as we move forward. But first, we have to meet our panel, and it is, trust me, an impressive panel of people to assemble for this conversation. We'll start with this. A Cincinnati, Ohio native, currently a special assistant with the Reds, and a Hall of Famer. He has a wife and 3 children, Barry Larkin, on our panel today. And you'll also notice we have players and people representing different parts of the country, different eras. That's very important to what we're doing here today. A Los Angeles, California native. This Reds outfielder played in Cincinnati for 9 seasons. He has a wife and 2 daughters, Eric the Red, Eric Davis. All right, born and raised in Seaford, Delaware. Anybody know who that is? The guy born and raised in Seaford, Delaware, spent 13 seasons in the Bigs as a player, has spent the past 12 years coaching in the Reds organization. A father of 5 is Delino DeShields, and what a family it is. Delino DeShields joins our panel today as well. Born in Buffalo, New York, raised in Niagara Falls. He was the Reds supplemental first-round pick in 2012. He's been a regular at the Academy. He's been a star on the field. Jesse Winker joins our panel today as well. Centerville, California, and he spent a lot of his time in nearby Barstow, California. A 2011 Reds pick after playing basketball in college, has now come to be a force out of the Reds bullpen. He's also a regular at the Reds Urban Youth Academy pitcher, Amir Garrett. And finally, a native of Mobile, Alabama, the Reds' first selection in the 2013 draft. He made his debut with the Reds in 2017. Also very active in Cincinnati at the Academy and other places, outfielder Phillip Ervin, a part of our panel here today as well. So let's start this way. One of the driving forces behind this conversation for the Reds was Delino DeShields. And Delino, as they went to you and talked about what this program could be, you were adamant that you wanted black players, that you wanted white players, and that you wanted to have an uncomfortable conversation. So I think the best way to start this, it's a broad question, but in light of what we're experiencing right now in the country, in light of what we're talking about now with race and injustice, what does this uncomfortable conversation look like? How does it start here today for you?
Well, definitely not pointing fingers at anybody. There's a lot of good cops out here, just like there's a lot of bad cops. So that's first and foremost, not to attack anyone. But my main thing through all of this, this isn't a new conversation. This is something that, especially in the African-American community, we've been dealing with this for way, way too long. And for me, it all comes back to education. You know what I mean? The more a person is educated, that's going to allow them to make better decisions. You know what I'm saying? That's going to allow them to value human life and look at people in a way that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So all these evils and ills that we talk about, to me, it all comes back to education. I think that's where a lot of our focus should be. And I'm not just talking about reading, writing, and arithmetic. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about real education, knowledge of self, knowledge of where you come from, You know what I'm saying? Your true history. And I think that's very important.
We're going to talk about history. We're going to talk about everyone's personal experience growing up, how that shaped you, how that shaped and formed the views that we have today, but also how we can all make those changes to come together. But in light of what's happened, the awful things that we've all seen recently in the news, and we mentioned the senseless killings, and certainly the tragedy involving George Floyd comes to mind first. Amir, I want to ask you this. As a player on the field, you're an emotional player. Fans love that about you. Teammates love that about you. But what have those emotions been like for you since you've begun to process some of the things going on? Since you saw what happened to George Floyd, how have you worked through your emotions, and how do you want to channel those into what we're trying to accomplish with conversations like this?
I mean, I'll definitely say it's hard. After I watched the video of George Floyd, I think, that really put me over the top, as far as what's been going on for so long. But it was just at that moment, I realized, like, we can't do this anymore. Everybody, it can't be, we just turn our shoulders and just sweep it under the rug. It can't happen. I find myself every single day holding my tongue, because somebody says something that doesn't agree with my opinion. But, everybody has their own opinions in this world, and it's freedom of speech. But it's definitely been hard for me. I know it's been hard for a lot of African Americans. And, I just want change in this world. Like Bob said, we're not pointing the fingers at anybody, but it comes down to being, a human being. George Floyd was a human being. And the person that did that to him, that cop that did that to him, he didn't look at him as a human being. It was just an unfortunate situation. And, like Bob said, there's good cops and bad cops, but we need to weigh out the good from the bad, man. And we need to come together. There's so much stuff, that we can do, and we start by having these uncomfortable conversations as well. I feel like that's the most important part. Like Bob said, education. Like today's Juneteenth. I know a lot of people that didn't even know what Juneteenth was. I mean, Winker, did you know what Juneteenth was? Be honest, did you know about it?
No.
A lot?
Nope.
You see, they don't really teach that in school. And it's the abolishment of slavery. Like it's when we became free as African Americans. And we have to teach this stuff in school, because it's very important. And even though it's part of history, I feel like our history has to evolve as well. And it starts here, with these conversations, with people going back and going to look at history, and just looking for themselves and not just listening to what we're being taught in school, because there's still a lot of stuff that I don't know. There's a lot of stuff, like, since all this has been happening, I've been literally diving in to the history. It's like, I didn't learn that in school. I didn't know that was true, or, they're telling me a different, story. And it's just, we have to start somewhere. And I feel like, this is the place to start.
Yeah, we have to start. And I think one of the phrases or the terms that we've heard so far is systemic racism. And the history that you're speaking of and some other things, I think, Barry, before we talk about we have to get past systemic racism, we have to be able to ask ourselves the questions, especially white people, that allow us to recognize and learn exactly what systemic racism looks like or what it is. You grew up in Cincinnati. Your baseball career and your other ventures have taken you all over the world. In terms of culture, society, and what you've experienced both at home and abroad, how do you see all of those things being able to come together to form a better country where we live right now?
Well, I feel we're in the middle of the beginning of change. And the reason for that isn't really the way things are happening. It's not the protest. It's who's protesting. It's who's out there standing arm in arm. It looks like our clubhouse out there, and added additional to some women that are out there as well. So it really truly is a united front. So, I was talking to a lot of people about this. I've spoken to so many non-Black people about what's going on. And the sentiment that I am getting is, we want to hear exactly, we're trying to listen. But my encouragement is that I'm encouraging you to try to feel what we're going through. It's one thing to listen to, one thing to hear what I'm saying, but if you can feel what I'm talking about, then we can really have change. So growing up in Cincinnati, I was faced with a lot of racial issues from, things, what happened with Marge Schott, and me commenting on the comments that Marge Schott made about a few of our players, to when I was a young boy playing in a tournament. I was me and this other Black kid were the only two that stayed in a hotel where all the other kids went and stayed with host family. So this has always happened. The difference that I see now, and the reason that I said we're at the beginning of what I believe is really going to change, is because we've been protesting against social injustice for many, many years. But it was us that was protesting. It was Black folk that were protesting. Now it's a united front. It's all ethnicities. It's women. It's men. It's the LGBTQ community. It's all those communities. So I'm encouraged about what I'm saying. I mean, we've even seen some political movement as well. This is the big thing I think is good. And I think the genesis, or the reason that it's going to change now, is because truly it's not just Black people out there being accepted of this social injustice.
Building off of what Barry said, Eric, growing up in California, playing in the Midwest in Cincinnati, I'm sure that was a shock, going from one part of the country to another where maybe things didn't look exactly the same. But as you look at what's going on right now, do you agree with Barry? Do you see this as different in some ways in terms of the response than what we've seen in the past?
Absolutely. I see it as different. And I started this campaign a long time ago when I was growing up in South Central Los Angeles. Police brutality is not new. It's something that has evolved with time. And for me, growing up in Los Angeles, the reason that it evolved, because when I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, you kind of had a consistency with LAPD officers in your demographics on where you lived. At South Central Los Angeles was really a 5 to 10 mile radius, and you kind of knew the police officers. It was the same guys who patrolled the areas. They became part of your neighborhood. You knew them and they knew you. So the understanding of what was expected, when you're talking about relationships, that was huge. Once the gang and the dope game started to infiltrate that inner cities, you had to in turn increase your police force. Now, when you increase that police force, they came from all different areas. They wasn't from Los Angeles. It came from back east. They came from the Midwest. They came from everywhere. And how they came was in a gang form of stopping it. Nobody took the time to understand how it manifested itself into what happened. Jumped in. Now, moving forward, nobody ever stopped the mindset of police officers from police brutality, and it just became more. Now, you fast forward that to what we have now, is the reason that we're in the situation that we're in now. But that, from that aspect, that's just the beginning. Where change is going to come is when the district attorneys start to understand that it's police brutality. The judges, the Senate, when they start to understand that it's police brutality, that's what the march is really all about. Because you can try these guys and you can charge them. I was there with Rodney King in '93 when 50 police officers beat the hell out of him on camera, and the verdict was not guilty. So that was a movement that started to LA Rise, where they burned down half of the city. So because of how blacks are being treated in the judicial system, not just from police brutality, but from unlawful sentencings and corruption and those things, that's what all of this has come to fruition, what we have now. So until you move forward in every facet of justice and injustices, then you're going to continue to have this. Now, everything that's going on today is positive. As far as the black movements and how people are viewing black people. But what bothers me for real, Brian, is that people act like they didn't know. They knew. This is not new. I shouldn't have to educate you when you have been around black people your whole life. Why? Because as black people, we talk about struggle all the time. It's not new. And so to say I didn't know is probably because you didn't want to know. Now, that's not for all white people. Jesse Winker here asked me about the things that I went through a whole lot of times. Joey Votto asked me about Compton and Long Beach when he was down there. He called me on the phone and said, "E.D., I want to go see Compton. I want to go see South Central. What shall I do?" I say, "Don't go at night. Go in the afternoon." That's a true story. So I've been wanting to learn. So it's not new. But now, because it resonated in plain view and everybody can see the disparity and the anguish and the disrespect on the officer's face with his hands in his pocket, kneeling on that kid's neck, that's what made people become super, super angry. Chokeholds and things of that nature made us angry, but just the way he felt empowered to choke that when people are saying, get off his neck, and nobody moved and did nobody help, that's what created all this. Yeah.
Jesse, obviously you and I come at this from a little bit different perspective. And I feel like we've all been challenged by what Edie just said and others to listen and to ask questions and to try to educate ourselves. But I'm wondering specifically, you have great friends who are black. You obviously have black teammates. How have you been challenged already, not even knowing where all of this is eventually taking us? How have you been challenged already by what's going on today in society?
You know what? It's hard because, like you said, Amir Garrett and Phillip Ervin, I've known them pretty much my whole baseball life. You know, Lark, ED, Bop, I've known them for extended periods of times. I have great relationships and friendships with all these men, and, you know, I'm going to talk to them for the rest of my life. So it's really hard. And, you know, you feel really bad. And I think what I feel bad about most is that, you know, I haven't used my voice up until now, you know, and for whatever reason, I just didn't. But I would always, like Edie said, I'd always be open to learning and listening. But I called Phil, Amir, and Bop, and I felt really bad. And I had great conversations with all three of them. And it's just like you said, I just want to continue to learn and continue to listen and just be a part of this solution, because even though I was never a part of the problem, and I feel a lot of the racism is started at the dinner table, I was never a part of that problem, but I know I am going to be a part of the solution. So I'm just here to continue to learn and use my voice, because like we just need to be better.
Yeah, and what you said is a good reminder that our audience for Share the Truth, this first episode, is intended to be young people. And for adults, we all have things as we try to learn and we try to be better that we have to undo, or that we have to unlearn or change ways. Maybe a lot of those obstacles don't exist yet for kids, because let's face it, they're shaped and they're molded by what we teach them, and more importantly, by what we show them. And so, Phil, as I go to you, knowing that you grew up in the South, I grew up in Texas, we could talk to guys from different parts of the country, but it's obviously there are different places that have changed more slowly or not at all than other places in the country. And I'm wondering what your experience growing up was like, and how it's kind of shaped who you are right now and how you want to be a voice in this conversation moving forward.
I don't know. Like you said, like in the South, you just kind of, you know, racism still alive. There was Confederate flags everywhere. in Alabama. Then now they changing that law, like you said. They've been tearing down monuments and flags everywhere. You, growing up, you kind of seen it, and you kind of was just used to it, I guess. Like, and you just kind of like you knew where to stay away. You just kind of knew how to move, I guess. Like I knew to stay away from property, like stay away from them, like stay away from, and everything's gonna be good. And like they're not gonna say nothing to me. But like I said, like I just want to be. I don't know. I like to change everybody talking and recognize racism. Like it's not gonna be a norm now. Like we don't have to be afraid to go places. Like I don't know. So.
And Brian,
Go ahead.
And it's crazy because when I first met Phillip, he told me he's from Alabama, and I used to ask him, like, how is it down there? Like, you know what I mean? Because I know where he's from is, racism is okay there. Like, I mean, it's like he said, it's normal, like, but it's not normal. Like they just like live through this stuff. You know what I mean? They stay away from each other or whatever, and you know what parts that you don't go to and stuff like that, and you know how to act accordingly. But that doesn't, you're not necessarily free. You know what I mean? Like that can't happen anymore. It shouldn't be like, okay, all these flags are flying high, or, the Confederate flags are at this house or whatever. This guy, I got to stay away from there. No, that's not how it should be. You know what I mean? And I feel like, we're taking a step in the right direction. But I remember, when you're talking to Phil, like, I just remember him telling me that. And it's like, yeah, we just stay away from, over there or whatever. That's not normal. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm talking about. Like people just like being blind to racism, just because of where he's from. Like, that's just, that's the normal thing, is stay away from those people, will stay away from these people. But it can't continue to be like that anymore.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that, Brian, please?
Yeah, Edie, go ahead.
Just to piggyback on what was said, born and raised in Los Angeles, I was the only one in my family that was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. The rest of my family, like Barry, was born in Mississippi. So every summer we would drive down to Mississippi because my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and all those guys was there. So my family, my dad, which was a huge influence on me, educated me and my brother about what transpired in the South prior to our existence. And growing up in California was more liberal. You saw mixed couples, racial couples. You didn't see that down in the South. So, but he made sure that we understood what to do and what not to do. Why Emmett Till and all the lynchings and things of that nature for whistling at white women. So it's about what you learn. It's about what your parents teach. As a white person, I don't know if Jesse's parents had that conversation, or if your parents had that conversations with you prior to you coming of age and actually making your own decisions. So when Winker talked about it starts at the dinner table, it's huge as you grow up. I didn't see lynchings in California, but when I got to Mississippi as a 7 or 8 or 9, 10-year older, it was everywhere. You was yes ma'am and no ma'am. You didn't have to say that in Los Angeles. So learning and having those hard conversations what Bob was talking about, those are the conversations that we as Blacks, I know we've had. I know Barry and his family have had them. But the question is, have the white people had them on the opposite side of hatred and bigotry and dislike of Blacks at those capacities, which is going to start the dialogue. That's the dialogue that I'm interested in to hear from. Not just say, okay, tell me how can I help now, but where does it resonate at?
Yeah, and I'll speak for myself, and I think you're exactly right, Ed. Those conversations don't always happen. They have to happen. Like I said, what do your kids learn? They don't know these things when they're born. They learn to see what they're told, how they're shaped by their environment, by their community. And as white people, we have to change that. We have no option but to change the way those things are done. But that's part of the reason, another reason we have different guys from different parts of the country. We have fathers on this panel who can have those conversations. And Delino, I know you with your children and specifically people who follow your son, Delino, who's also been very active in expressing things and has been active in trying to effect change. What's your relationship? You know, we talked to you and Delino on Father's Day when he was in Cincinnati with the Rangers. What's your relationship with him and what you've taught him and how you're seeing some of those things happen now in his life in terms of the stands that he's taking?
Well, I tell this story a lot. You know, it's funny. As we raise our children, we don't think they hear a lot of the things that we try to pour into them. But, you know, hearing him speak, I knew that he was listening to his father. You know, so I'm proud of that. But just speaking to these young men, everybody that wants to make change, you gotta surround yourself with progressive thinking people, white, black, Latino. It doesn't matter. They just got to be progressive thinking. They has to be politically inclined. You know what I'm saying? They have to know how to organize. So once again, this all comes back to education. You know, I don't deal in emotion with this stuff anymore. I'm way past being emotion and tearing stuff up. You know what I'm saying? It's time to use our brains and to use our voting power and to organize. You know, this is part of the educational process that I'm talking about. You know, you got a lot of kids out here, a lot of people that want change, but they don't really know how to go about it. You know what I'm saying? They don't know how to organize. They don't know the politics behind these certain things. So once again, it all comes back to education.
Yeah. Barry, we're looking at a panel of current and former baseball players, and with that comes a platform. And listen, make no mistake about it, we're looking for change as a country. We're looking for change at every level. We're looking for change in neighborhoods and communities. But there's a platform that goes along with playing Major League Baseball, and with all of your experience in the game and with we've got Reviving Baseball in Inner Cities. We've got the Dream Series. We have Jackie Robinson Day. What more would you like to see in terms of change, education, things that we can do as the baseball community to come together to help?
You know, all those programs that you mentioned are good programs, great programs. However, they're basically events. There's not part of the nucleus of baseball. You know, baseball is the national pastime. Not in every community anymore, because we as players, as Black young men, we're stereotyped as, oh, he's the one guy that's not going to play basketball. He's the one Black guy that's not going to play football. He's the one guy that's going to play baseball. Everybody on here on their little league teams probably was definitely part of the minority, sans Winker, right? And it's just because systemically there are these stereotypes that just exist. So as far as Major League Baseball as a platform, Major League Baseball has to get invested in the African American community and not placate African American community. That means people of color need to have opportunities to own baseball. They need to have opportunities to work non-traditional African American jobs, front office jobs, analysts. They're hiring analysts all over the place. But how many of those analysts are from the African American community? How many people in the African American community know about these jobs that exist? Everybody can't be Amir Garrett. Everybody can't be Phillip Ervin. Everybody can't be a Major League Baseball player. But if I like the game, or if I'm trying to get out of the hood and baseball's the vehicle, it's not just as a baseball player. It's a baseball man. There are opportunities, there are jobs for me in baseball that aren't the traditional, okay, I'm 6'5" left-handed reliever. I play basketball, but I can play baseball too. I'm an athletic football player, and I can play center field as well. So really for me, the platform is institutional change as far as going out and seeking people to fill slots in the game of baseball, real, true positions of authority, of decision-making abilities, things like that. I think if Major League Baseball wants to make a change, and this is the time to make the change, you're going to have to see in the face of the game.
Yeah, well, listen, this is a time, this is so unique that we're having these conversations about race, but it's a unique time in our country because the game is not being played right now. We have time to think. We have time to talk. We have time to implement. And on draft night, we saw the general managers from around baseball get behind this cause, or at least plant some seeds in terms of this cause. You've heard Theo Epstein talk about some of the changes he personally hopes to make. And you're right, that has to continue to change. And it's probably a good time to mention that the Reds, in addition to this conversation and some other things, there's a website, reds.com/unity, that just launched today that addresses some initiatives and some action items that the Reds hope to get behind and that all of us hope to take to continue to make some of these changes. Amir, I want to go back to you, because as players in the game, in clubhouses and on fields, at what point, Jesse said he called you guys when he wanted to talk and he wanted to get some answers and feel things out with everything going on. What about you? What do you want teammates like Jesse and others, specifically white teammates, to know about how this can continue, the conversations can continue, and real change can start to happen at the level where you are?
First off, I want to say, like, you know, because there's not that much black athletes, baseball players, right? So I feel not being left on the island. You know, everybody knows I'm a team guy. No matter what, I got all my guys back. For this to really change, we need. I know I'm speaking for my organization and my clubhouse. I need my teammates to have my back, if that's what they feel. You know what I mean? It's like, as a black athlete, black baseball player, at times I'm scared to speak up, right? Because I know I can be ran out of the game that fast. You know, and it shouldn't be like that. If I speak my mind about what I believe in, I shouldn't have second thoughts in my head, like, man, like, should I stand up for what's right or should I not? Should I, like, shy away? Like, you know what I mean? That's tough for, you know, someone of color to think about. You know, like, I know my teammates have my back, but I really need them to have my back. You know, like, if I'm speaking up on something, if they really feel that way as well, if they feel as the same as I feel, I need them to be there for me, you know, like I would be there for them. It goes past just the players as well. It goes to the ownership, you know, to the organization, to everybody being on the same page and not just talking about it. You know, it's not about just posting a picture. I know me and Winker had that conversation before. It's not about just posting the picture. It's about, you know, actually doing something. You know what I mean? And it's like actually, you know, like standing up for what you believe in, having these uncomfortable conversations and making other people uncomfortable as well. Because, you know, we are never gonna have change if we keep turning our back to this, man. Like that's the biggest thing I'm preaching is the uncomfortable conversations, because these need to be had, you know, especially in baseball, man. Like, it just bothers me sometimes, because it feels like, you know, like I go back to not having, you know, the firepower or a lot of people in baseball, and it's like there's so much I can say, but I have to shy away from it. And you know, I bet you players, you know, that are white, they don't have to worry about that. They do not have to worry about that.
You know,
and,
Brian,
you know, it's a tough situation to be in.
Can I join you, Amir?
Yeah.
You know, political correctness is kind of out the window now. I think that's where it's going. It's like, he's absolutely right. I mean, when I was playing, thank goodness, had more, I think maybe 8%. So we had more of a platform. But the guys right now, it's like guys don't really have the stability. They have a platform, but they don't have the stability of that platform that guys that, well, I know that I had back in the day, because we addressed some issues with Marge Schott. Marge Schott made some comments about some players, and I responded being the captain of the team. And, you know, I was called an abolitionist, and I had death threats, and I had all this kind of different stuff. But I also had my brothers on the team, black in particular, that had my back. And because it was Eric Davis and Dave Parker or a Ricky Henderson, a really good player in the league, they had the support because they were those really, really good players. So I feel what Amir is saying, and it's like, absolutely, everyone should be speaking on it now, because the political correctness, when it used to be just the black players to talk about the black issues, that's gone out the window. It's everyone. Silence at this particular point is complicity. So the political correctness is gone. There's not an excuse anymore. And that, in my opinion, is the reason that there is going to be change.
I want to come back, obviously speaking about that era, I want to come back to ED, but first, Jesse, I want to go to you based on what Amir said. And as a white player who has obviously great friends who are black, roommates who are African-American, but if we're gearing this conversation, which we are, towards young people who may be at the youth academy or any young person who has the opportunity to watch this program, what do you say? What do I say to white kids that are watching this about how we recognize how we need to challenge ourselves? I've heard people say it's not enough to say I'm not racist. That's not enough. You got to understand what it is or what it looks like or how it feels before you can move even towards that comment at all. What would you say to young white kids about all this discussion that we're having?
I mean, Amir and Lark kind of nailed it, but what I would say is you're either a good person or you're not. Like, you can go post a picture, you can hashtag whatever you want, but if you're a bad person, you're a bad person. And if you're judging people based off their skin color, there's something going on way deeper than the surface area, right? Than that picture you posted or whatever. So it's like, for me, I called Amir and I'm like, man, I want to use my platform. I called Bop and Bop told me, like, use your platform, use your voice. Like, I'm hoping this never dies down until it's right. Like, I want to help carry that torch until there is change, and that we can all, like, sit back and be like, you know what, like, the world's it's better now. So until we get to that point, like, I want to use whatever I can use. And that's not just continuing to educate and learn, but that's use my platform as well and talk and have these conversations and listen to my great friends and listen to some mentors in my life to learn what they've gone through. And I'm white. I haven't gone through any of this, right? Like, I've been pulled over plenty of times, and not one time did I think my life could be in danger right now, and that's just the God's honest truth. Mm-hmm. So I can't relate to that. But what I can do is learn and educate myself and be there for them. Like, whatever my teammates want to do, I'm going to be there for them. Like, and it's just that plain. It's that simple. And like Lark said, if you're silent now, it's out the window. Like, you can't be silent anymore. Like, we need to be better as a country. There's a reason why we call ourselves the greatest country on earth. Like, we need to kind of put up now and start, taking some action.
Yeah. Phil, you dealt with racism, obviously, growing up. Do you feel, in terms of how you maybe responded to it in the past, or maybe where we are today as a society with more people discussing the things that are happening right now, do you feel, as you head back to the game, hopefully soon, empowered that there can be change, knowing that you've seen some of the worst of it growing up and experienced some of the bad things?
Oh, yes. Like, I'm excited. Like everything is going, like, all this talk and everything that's happening right now, I think it's good. Cause like I said, it should be a change. Like, so I don't know. I'm liking everything that's going forward, and like all the discussion about it, and everything. Like I said, it's going to be a change. I think there's something good gonna come from all this, and I don't know. So I'm in good spirits.
Yeah. Hopefully more people. Hopefully we can continue to feel better and better about the conversations. But ED, we have to have the tough ones. We have to ask the tough questions. We have to get uncomfortable, like Delino said. And you were there, obviously, when Barry talked about the issues that you guys faced. And you did stand up. How are we different now in terms of the opportunities for players of color to stand up and say the things that they feel they need to say and things that need to be said?
Well, we're different about 1,000% because of social media and the different platforms that you can use to express how you feel. Video and technology has allowed people to listen, to watch, to exploit certain things that transpire every day. That was different from even before my time till the incidents with Mars and all the other different things that happen in society, not just for myself. But change is the unknown, and people aren't willing to attack the unknown. Because when you talk about who's willing to lay it on the line, if you listen to what Barry said, he was willing to take the death threats and all the things that came along with that. As Black people, who is willing to take that step? And for me, in my era, there's only 4 athletes that have ever really taken the strong stance in this country. And one was Muhammad Ali. The second one was the 2 brothers that held up the Black Power sign in the Olympics. Their whole lives was changed. And Colin Kaepernick, his whole life was changed. Prior to those 3, and if I miss somebody please help me. But that's all I see where they did tremendous change that put everything on the line. And today, that's what I'm looking for is it's not about tweets for me. It's not about putting a picture up and saying Black Power. It's like, what are we going to do? Are we willing to change? And as a Black person, we've had to adapt since we've been in existing. We've always had to adapt. Even now, where we have so many Blacks in our minor league system and only 1 in our major league system. So if you look at someone like a Delino DeShields, who's managed at every level in this organization, and when there's opportunities for moving to a higher platform, name never comes up. You see guys that have been put in positions of authority, even in our organization, that just got here, and guys have paid dues and really was showing loyalty to our organization, have been bypassed. And so once you can start to understand the systemic racism of how things are moving, and people not just talking about it, but really being about it, and not afraid to say, I might have another Black manager, I might have an all-Black coaching staff. People look at that like they lose their mind in this country if you had an all-Black coaching staff. But how many teams have an all-white coaching staff? And nobody says nothing because that's the normal. But when we comment on it, then we're the bad person that commented on it. But all we want is equal, so that we can prove the things that Barry was saying, that we're just as good, if not better, than our counterparts. Those are issues that they won't have. And those are issues, to me, in our sport. If we can change inside of our sport, we can change society, because the more Black people you see in authority, you're going to see more Black pitching coaches. You're going to see more Black bench coaches. All the coaches we have on this field now is first base coaches or an outfield coach. We're smarter than that. They know we're smarter than that. But until they're willing to make that change and not be fearful of the change. Everybody knows Barry Larkin is a Hall of Famer, and he's very articulate. He's so smart here. That's a fear factor for people. But they won't say, I'm afraid of Barry Larkin, because they will just blow it off and then they try to do their own thing. I've been in this organization for 12 years. And I honestly, I don't feel like I can move. But why? I don't know that. But the people who have to make those decisions have to be willing to accept it. Theo Epstein, to me, said it very articulate, and I believe him, because he said, I need to change my practices. I need to open up my mind to people that don't look like me or sound like me, that can help me. That's where change comes from. And so if we can change the industry, you're going to get more Black kids. There are black kids playing, but we don't have the outlets to say, come join us. If you look at the NBA, all their networks is blacks. Everybody that's really critiquing the thing and publicizing their sport, it's black. Yes, they have more black players than we do, but in order for us to build that gap, we have to be able to plug into positions where we can bring people and athletes along that can help us outside the game. Because if we don't have help outside the game, we're not going to get help inside the game. And so we have to work inside out, which will bring more change throughout the whole country.
Delino, since ED brought it up, as you transition from player into coaching, managing, and everything that you've done along the way, do you feel, you knew limitations racially, at least as a player, I'm certain. Do you feel those in your post-playing career now as a coach? And do you agree with ED that there just has to be those opportunities and there have to be those positions filled by people of color to instigate this change?
I definitely agree with Eric. I mean, you know, it's very tough. It's very disheartening at times. Like you said, you know you're qualified for these jobs when they come about, but you seem to get overlooked. You know what I mean? And it gets very challenging. But at the same time, I feel like it's my responsibility to stay in this fight. You know, you can't win a fight or a race if you're not in the race, so to speak. You understand? So I have to stay involved. I have to keep up a good fight, so to speak, just to make sure that somebody else is going to get an opportunity behind me. So, but it is very disheartening. But like I said, I'm never going to play the victim. You know what I mean? It's just you know, we have to do what we have to do ultimately. But you have to be in the race to win it.
You got to be in the race.
Yeah. Amir, speaking of a younger player, and you're on this panel with three guys that went before you. Laid some of the groundwork. How can the two groups help work together? How can the ex-player generation, the current player generation of black players come together and feed off each other and help have some of these conversations and make some changes that we need to see?
You know, I think they're doing a great job, but like ED said, we need these guys around. We need them around. You know what I mean? It's like, it's very secluded, you know, in organizations like, you know, you got Lark, you got ED, like, they have jobs, but it's not the jobs that we need them to have to help push players like me or help push players like Phil. They need to have some important roles, man, and I feel that's very important, really important. You know, because these are actually players that have done it. You know, they've been, you know, like they've dealt with harder situations than we even had to deal with today when they were playing. You know what I mean? But it's just allowing them to get the opportunity, and, you know, for us to feed off them and, you know, just give back into the community, you know, and hopefully we can get some numbers of some black kids playing baseball because like me, like baseball was my first sport, but it was kind of tough for me because I didn't see, you know, like too many brothers playing baseball. I seen basketball and football. So that's what I migrated to. You know what I mean? Or like they said, like people in the baseball world. You know, it don't even have to be just baseball players. You know, it can be umpires. It can be people that analysis. You know, whoever, MLB Network. You know what I mean? And it's just, you know, these other sports it's so easy to go with the norm because that's what all kids of color is doing. They're playing basketball, they're playing football. So it's just way easier. You know, so we got to do a better job of getting in the community, you know, together with the young school and the old school, and, you know, just letting them kids know, like, you know, that we're there for them. Because I know at times when I was younger, I was lost because I didn't feel, you know what I mean, that I had anybody. You know, of course I had my dad and stuff, but I didn't feel like I had any other players, you know, to be around. I was the only black kid on the team at times. And I'm like, man, like, it's kind of different. You know what I'm saying? And that's why the reason I chose basketball, because everybody looked around, and I looked around, everybody was like me, man. And, you know, I felt in place.
Yeah. Jesse, you mentioned early on that you talked to Amir, that you talked to Phil, you talked to Bob. I'm wondering if you have a sense right now, when we all do get back to play baseball, whenever that is, do you have a sense for any of the other white players that you know on this team or other teams in terms of how this has impacted them? Has it been similar to how you feel it's impacted you, or have you got kind of a different response or a range of responses from other white players that you know?
Well, when all this went down, initially, obviously you're taken back, and like, you're like, damn, like, it was just really sad. Right. And then I read what Joey said in the Inquirer, and me and Amir were talking about that. And, I think he kind of hit the nail on the head with that. And, he kind of described it perfectly. Like, you know, similar to me, he grew up with a bunch of black friends. I grew up with black friends, Spanish friends, Asian friends, girls. It just didn't matter to me, right? But that's how I was raised. Like, I was raised in sports, and I was raised by a good family. Like, we're just good people, right? And that's what good people do. Like, they're friendly to everybody. But what I felt most bad, like what I felt awful about, and I know a lot of other guys did as well, is that I hadn't used my voice or my platform, because Delino told me, like, hey, you matter in this as well. Like you have a following, you have kids that look up to you. And if you're going to follow me and support me, and I hope, like, buy my jersey or whatever, like, you have to understand that, like, I've had black friends my whole life. So if you're a kid or you're a grown man and you don't see eye to eye with that, like, that's a problem for me. And I know I saw Amir say something on Instagram to somebody as well, like something to the extent of, like, if you're saying this on this page, like, and you follow me, like, yeah, I can't have that anymore. Like, I don't even want you to follow me. So it's like, you know, if you're a racist person in today's world, there's really no place for that. And that's really all I got to say, man. Like, that's it. It's sad that it's 2020 and we still have to talk about this, really.
Yeah. I think we all agree on that. We have time for one or two more thoughts. And it's been such a productive and honest discussion, I think. Barry, when we talk about hope, and I've heard some people say already, you know, hope's not good enough. Action, other words other than hope. Are you optimistic? Is that a fair word, or are you not, just based on what we've said today in how things appear to be trending, at least currently, and we hope that continues towards change? Are you optimistic or not?
I am optimistic. I have a tendency to be optimistic. I won't say I'm cautiously optimistic, because I truly am optimistic. I believe, once again, the reason that there is going to be change is because Jesse Winker is on this phone call. Mm-hmm. And you're on this phone call. Joey Votto said what I had a chance to talk to David Bell, same sentiments. Don't want to miss the point. This is the manager of the Cincinnati Reds asking me how he can be better. So that's leadership. That shows vulnerability from your team captain, per se, in Joey Votto, and your team manager in David Bell. So for me, that's what leads me to be very optimistic, is that these guys, albeit they can't necessarily know exactly what it's like, they want to understand, and most importantly, they want to feel what it's like. And everyone that I've spoken to will not only stand behind, but stand with every black man that they have come in contact with. So that leads me to believe that change is coming, because it has to start with an individual, and that catches fire. Hopefully that's what happens within Redsland. Hopefully that's what happens within the city of Cincinnati, the state of Ohio, and through the country and the world.
Well said. Bob, you were instrumental in putting this panel together. You helped generate the conversation here and the voices that we would hear in this conversation today. So the final word goes to you. If this is the first of a beginning of a series of conversations, where do we head? Where do we need to go from here with these talks?
I think I alluded to it earlier. You know, I keep talking. Well, first, when we first started, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. You know, if I were to point a finger at anybody, it would probably be at myself. You know, and at the Black community in general. You know, it's nobody's responsibility to fix us. You know what I'm saying? We have our own issues outside of what's going on, but that's our responsibility. You know what I'm saying? We need to be accountable for that. But the police brutality situation has to stop. You know what I'm saying? It just has to. If we could curtail that and fix that situation, I think that would go a long ways with helping race relationships or race relations in this country. Just the relationship with the police and the African American community. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I'd like to take this time to thank each of you for an honest, open conversation. We hope this is the first of many conversations. A new series called Share the Truth, presented by the Reds. And we want to continue, like Bob said, to continue to have the uncomfortable conversations, ask the uncomfortable questions that will generate not just more words, but action and change as much as we can control within the Reds community and in the Cincinnati community, and then building out from there. So Barry Larkin, Jesse Winker, Amir Garrett, Delino DeShields, Phillip Ervin, Eric Davis. Thanks to all of you. Check out reds.com/unity for more information on this series and more. And we'll see you for our next edition of Share the Truth, presented by the Cincinnati Reds. Guys, thanks.